there was Earth, seen not as the map maker would have you identify it. No, the countries were not color-coded with boundaries. We went to the moon and we discovered Earth.
Astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about space exploration really opening our eyes to Earth. This is the current team aboard the International Space Station, just completed its third spacewalk in just over a week. This spacewalk, the latest in preparation for berthing docks and future Boeing and SpaceX projects. As those astronauts work hard above us in space, a fellow astronaut also believes that space offers a unique perspective on the problems we face here on Earth. Here to offer his orbital point of view, Colonel Ron Garan, NASA astronaut and author of the book, The Orbital Perspective, Lessons in Seeing the Big Picture from a Journey of 71 Million Miles. Ron, it is so good to have you here on America's Forum.
Hi, JD. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Thanks for Skyping in from Houston. Now, the guys aboard the ISS have done 3 spacewalks this week. You did, I believe, a total of 4. And one, I believe, on your first shuttle mission is the one that you write about in this book on Canadarm2. Tell us about that and what you felt out there during that walk.
Sure. On my third spacewalk of our first mission, and that was STS-124, was in 2008, and our mission was to deliver and install the Japanese laboratory on board the International Space Station. And on the third spacewalk, I was, like I said, strapped, my toes were clamped to the end of the Canadian robotic arm, Canadarm2, and it was flown through a maneuver we called the windshield wiper. It was this maneuver that took me across the top of the space station and back in this big arc. On the first swipe of the windshield wiper, if you will, it was nighttime. And so my task was to hold this 500-pound nitrogen tank that was depleted, take it to one side of the space station, grab a new one from my spacewalk partner, Mike Fossum, and then bring that back and install it. So the first swipe was at night, and it was a little eerie as I was rising above the space station into the darkness above. But, you know, these are one of the rare moments on a spacewalk where you really don't have a lot to do other than just kind of hang on. And so I took the opportunity at the top of this arc to turn my lights off on my helmet. And when I did that, you know, I was rising up into this utter blackness, this undescribable darkness and blackness. But when I turned my lights off and I had a chance for my eyes to adjust, all of a sudden I could see infinity. I could see the entire universe. All the stars came out. I could see satellites whizzing by. And that was tremendous. But on the way back, it was on the daytime side of the orbit. And now, at the top of this arc, I was 100 feet above the space station looking down at this amazing accomplishment of humanity against the backdrop of our just indescribably beautiful planet. And what really struck me in that moment was the international cooperation that built the International Space Station. And when you look at the difference between the beauty of our planet and the unfortunate realities of life on our planet, it makes you wonder if we could do that in space, if 15 nations, some of which were not always the best of friends, some of which were on the opposite sides of the Cold War, opposite sides of the space race, if they could do that in space, imagine what we could do by working together to solve the problems facing our planet.
Now, we all are familiar with the Apollo 8 image of Earthrise, and it gave way to a kids show called Big Blue Marble. But your unique perspective, looking down at planet Earth, you call it a fragile oasis. Now, you talk about practical solutions to the problems here on this fragile oasis. How do we make those things happen?
Well, I think the first thing we need to realize is there's about 20 million organizations around the world working to improve life on Earth, but for the most part, they're not engaged in a unified, coordinated effort. There's so much lack of efficiency, duplication of effort. There's unfortunately destructive competition, even amongst humanitarian organizations, and that's competition that doesn't lead to better goods and services, but leads to higher prices and lack of the good that these organizations could otherwise do. And so I think the first step to being able to apply that perspective to solving the problems facing our planet is to just realize that we're long past the point where any one organization, any NGO, one nation for that matter, can't affect the type of real change that's required.
Well, mindful of that, I'm interested again in that incredible experience on Canadarm2. As I was reading your book, you said it wasn't an epiphany, but kind of close to it. I guess St. Paul was on the road to Damascus. Was that moment in space for you almost a Damascus-like experience?
Well, I described it in the book as an epiphany in slow motion, and I don't think that the orbital perspective, this perspective that I write about in the book, was born out of a single moment in space. But I think there are moments, like the one we just described, that taken it over the context of many, many months in space, many months looking back at our planet, and pondering what the world will look like in 50 years, pondering why we still face so many issues. I think in that context, there are specific moments that really lead to this perspective shift.
And mindful of that, you were trained as a fighter pilot. You spent hours as a fighter pilot. You were a warrior. But this new perspective to solve problems doesn't discount conflict, does it? In the 2 minutes that remain, how do we go from competition or perhaps hostility to cooperation and problem solving?
Well, in April of 2011, I was at the base of a launch pad in Kazakhstan, in the former Soviet Union, a former top-secret military installation, and I looked up at a rocket with an American flag on it, which is a perfect example of what we can do if we find those things that we agree on, like space exploration. We engage in cooperative actions on those things that we agree on, and then hopefully that builds a platform of personal relationships, a platform of trust, from which we can then address the things that we don't agree on. But we tend to do the exact opposite. We tend to take the things that we agree on and we use them as leverage, as pressure to force the things that we don't agree on, and that really doesn't work on the most basic level. And so I think by embracing the low-hanging fruit, if you will, embracing the things that we do agree on, we could start to work on the things that we don't.
Colonel Ron Garan, we thank you for your perspective. The name of the book again, The Orbital Perspective, Lessons in Seeing the Big Picture from a Journey of 71 Million Miles. And I really have enjoyed reading Ron's book. I can tell you that he really describes that spacewalk in such incredible, almost poetic terms. And it is interesting to see someone trained as he was in the military, involved in military actions, now taking, not dismissing the military, but taking perhaps a more holistic view of what the future could hold in terms of practical problem solving. So our thanks to Colonel Ron Garan, NASA astronaut, Skyping in today from Houston. When we come back, the earthbound problems of our economy. Sean Hyman will join us to talk money. That's coming up in mere moments, right after this Newsmax Now update.